Tim Pernetti, Conference Commissioner of the American Conference, and how about Army? And, of course, a conference that has been very strong. He joins us, and it's great to have you, Tim. Thank you very much for your time with Paul Craig. I'm David Smoke. We have spent like the first hour of the show, the latest standings, and so much more. What are your thoughts about what the expanded playoff has meant to college football and also what it means to the American Conference?
You're muted.
Tim, you got to turn your mute off there.
Let's try that again, guys.
There we
right?
go. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
It's like the amateur hour over here.
No.
Late in the day. What I was saying was thanks for the opportunity to be on and appreciate you guys having me. There's no downside to the expanded playoff. I think anytime you can create opportunities for more meaningful college football in the postseason, it's a good thing. And expanded access and expanded footprint means like it gives more the opportunity to play into it. And as evidenced by, what went down last night and looking at the rankings and seeing how things are changing, the silver lining to all of this stuff is it's just such a groundswell of interest around how the next couple of weeks are going to play out and who's going to end up with an opportunity to play in the postseason.
Do you feel that part of your job is to defend your conference or to go on the offensive to make sure that things get out? Because there are narratives from the other leagues, and you've got active commissioners who are trying to do their job and push their conference. But given that you guys don't get as much respect as maybe you deserve, how much of that do you feel like is a fight for you as a commissioner?
Well, I think every commissioner has to battle. You always have to make a case for your league. You have to make a case for many of your institutions that are competing at a high level. So you always want to be in the game of making sure you're creating the maximum amount of visibility that you can for your conference. The thing that maybe a lot of people out there don't know and fans don't know is there's an agreement that commissioners are not to politic for their institutions during the regular season as relates to CFP, whether publicly or behind the scenes. So there's a real gentleman's understanding of how this is going to work. Try to put the committee, like we all have a say in who gets nominated to be on the committee, and then the CFP selects them. But I think this is a very hard job. A lot of people can easily question what the results are, but a commissioner's job is to advocate for their league. How do you advocate without violating the rules around what you can do? You just make sure there is a consistent narrative about your conference on a daily basis. You can't just do that because you feel like it. You do have to have results behind you. So I think in a year like this where we have Army competing at a high level and Tulane competing at a high level and Memphis competing at a high level and some of the newer members even in our league that have emerged, when you look at North Texas, it's exciting. And it's great to be a commissioner when you have multiple teams in the conversation in the second half of November. And that's where the American is, and we feel like we're well positioned.
Tim, do you believe that all the commissioners around the league, around the country, have actually held to that agreement about not politicking for their conference?
Guys, I can't really speak to what the other guys are doing.
I had to ask, though.
Listen, I heard about this show, and I was excited to come on because I heard you guys shoot it straight, and I'm from Jersey, and that's the way we do it, all right? So we're just going to put it out there. But listen, I think every conference commissioner is doing the same thing, right, which is like I'm spending time with you guys. Commissioners are working with their staff to make sure that between the institution who's putting out their narrative about their success and the conference that's putting out their narrative about conference success, is you want to make sure that you tell your story. And that's completely within the bounds of what everybody is doing. So I think every commissioner that's out there is doing the same thing. Some are telling their story in a specific way. Others are telling their story differently. Like everybody, it's not a one size fits all. But we have to look each other in the eye and sort of we agree to these things in the room. Like, here's how we're going to function as an enterprise, as commissioners that govern FBS football. And we have to be able to trust each other that everybody is going to do the same thing.
Tim, when it comes to college, I'm sure a lot of the questions you get are about the chaotic nature of it and the doomsday scenarios and all of that. But with your background, whether it be IMG, MLS, ABC Sports, all these different things, Is it also really fun in some ways, just the amount of opportunity that's out there and the amount of creativity that is needed, but also out there as well?
You nailed it. Fun is the key word in the whole thing. And I've been really lucky to have a career that's taken me all over the sports and entertainment industry. And college was sort of my first exposure to the business. Was in my first job at ABC Sports. I learned the deal making side and got into programming and sort of saw what ADs and commissioners and everybody did. And I was immediately enamored with the whole thing because I have felt from the beginning, and I still feel today, that college is very undervalued. You have an industry that has massive affinity, has just unbelievable growth, not only on the business side, but sort of in affinity and brand and fans and all of these things. But so long as the conferences are all out there independently, working on their own media deals and trying to build their own enterprise, I don't know that we're ever going to realize the full value of what this thing is worth. Because if the pro leagues alone are a good example, you know, the NBA, ratings wise, the NBA and college football, they don't compare. College football blows it away. On the media side of the business and what's being generated in media rights, the NBA blows college football away in their new deal. Why? They're a single seller to the marketplace. So the fun is definitely there. I think the industry got to get more comfortable talking about change. You know, there is a real resistance in the industry to talk about change. I actually think the reason we've arrived where we've arrived with House and all the litigation that's going on around the industry is because the industry has failed to modernize over the last 10 to 15 years. There are decisions that were able to be made that may have at least gotten us a step ahead of some of this stuff to be able to more effectively manage it. But you know, it's time to push the envelope. It's time to sell conference naming rights. It's time to talk to private capital and private equity, which we've been doing. Like, it's a new day. And if you're not evolving with your business, then you're going to fall behind.
Tim, I was going to ask you about private capital and private equity. There's a lot of it out there. But, of course, you've got to make the right choices that are benefiting it. And I know that some of it comes from other places in the world that may not care about college football as much. How hard is it to sift through that, to not just find partners that have a lump of cash that can help you get and close the gap on the leagues that, you know, are making more money, but also someone that's interested in your actual growth and not just you being part of their portfolio?
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody out there that looks at sports anymore that is their vanity plays. You know, being part of the portfolio is not enough anymore. And, you know, I had the fortunate opportunity when I worked at Endeavor and IMG to be part of multiple deals that involved businesses that we sold to private equity. And what you know about private equity is they are attracted to businesses with huge affinity that have experienced significant and you know, dependable growth that maybe could be run better. And like, is there a poster child any more than college sports for that equation? So I think that's what makes us attractive as an industry. Having said that, everybody has to figure out what the right entry point is. I look at our conference as an asset that's worth a certain amount of revenue or a certain amount of money based on what we know is coming in the door. And what I'm looking for is a partner that will make an investment in that and help us accelerate the investment that we're already planning to make over a period of time and have growth on the other side where they can participate in the upside of that growth. But like, private equity is the buzz, right? The capital in private equity is much more expensive to access, but there are many strategies to capitalize an asset like a conference, whether it's private credit or debt or whatever it is. Like, there's a lot of opportunities, but we're all still trying to learn from each other what the best entry point is, but it's there and it's going to happen.
The commissioners now of conferences are, it's kind of a change in where you come from. For example, you or even Tony Petitti or Brett Yormark. Is that because there's so much money involved and everyone's trying to find that extra nickel?
I think fresh perspective is what a lot of conferences are looking for now, right? Because it's not a traditionally run business anymore. And because the commercial growth, guys, has gotten so big that it's now forced us into this conversation about compensation of student athletes and sharing in the commercial revenue and sharing in the growth, which I think is all entirely fair. Like, I think student athletes deserve the right to be able to monetize based on how the industry has built all this value essentially on their backs. So I think fresh perspective and people that have built and run and sold successful businesses in the private sector is critically important, or that have worked in pro sports. Like my first job at ABC Sports, I mentioned to you guys, I worked across the hall from Tony Petitti when I was 24 years old.
There you go.
And he was a programming guy, and he built the BCS out of his office. Like he had a vision for something that didn't exist, that was change and was controversial, but actually turned the industry in a different direction. I think collegiate athletics needs that type of innovative thought and fresh perspective more than it ever has before.
Tim, you mentioned naming rights and all of that, because that's a different thing altogether than private capital and private equity. Why wasn't that something before? Like, what was the actual hang up on that? Because it seems like, especially in the old system, that would have been something that just would have done.
It's a great question. I think I'd sum it up in one word: tradition is probably the thing that stands in the way. You know, the thing that stands in the way so much, guys, of our, quite frankly, our responsibility to modernize the business is the tradition of the way things have been done for so long. And having played college football, I had the opportunity to play at Rutgers, 100 years ago, and had that experience. And the tradition of college football and what it means to people, I really got caught up in it, even when I was just getting recruited. So I think tradition over time and how things have been done a very specific way gets in the way sometimes of innovative thought. But the reality is, for a while, it was like, all right, we need to generate more revenue, sponsorships on campus and multimedia rights. We need to generate more revenue. Okay, our ratings are up. We're going to renew our TV deal. We need to generate more revenue. And at some point, you hit a ceiling of what the opportunities are. So now it's time to unlock some things that have never been done before. But people's thought process of, okay, the American Athletic Conference, you got brand equity in there. How do I feel about it being called the American Express Conference? Like, or how do we feel about, the Big 12 having a different name as a like, these are the days that we live in. Our job is to better resource institutions to create a better experience for student athletes. If the experience is better, the activity where everybody's running back and forth starts to balance itself out more than it is today.
Well, there's a lot of speculation and about the rich getting richer and who's going to be left behind if that happens. Do you think when you sit down and talk to Tony Petitti, or if you talk to Greg Sankey, that they pay attention to what is best for college football or athletics, or best for them?
I can tell you from my experience sitting in that room, and Tony, thankfully I have a relationship that goes back, and I also have a relationship with Greg and every other commissioner in the room. I think the mystery that's out there is everybody's looking at, like, is it the Hatfields and the McCoys? Is it us versus them? Mm-hmm. When we're in that room at these CFP meetings, which is a regular occurrence, there is a group of people in that room listening to each other, talking to each other, and trying to figure out a way to move the enterprise forward. At times, does it feel like, hey, some are looking out for opportunities that are good for them and that's not necessarily good for everyone else? Like, I think that's a fair statement to make, because everybody is exploring everything. Like, your job as commissioner is to do what's best for your league. But what I would tell everyone is this growth in college football, this growth in collegiate athletics, you had a lot of commissioners that came before all of us. Jim Delaney, Tom Hansen, Mike Slive, Roy Kramer, John Swafford. While they had to protect the interests of their conference, they knew that moving the enterprise forward together was accretive for everyone. And I think that's why some of these things that are out there, new proposals, new postseasons, new leagues, nobody's saying everybody has to do anything, but it needs to be discussed because it provokes thought about how to modernize the future. So college football, like, our product is college football. It's not SEC football, Big Ten, American football. College football is our collective product. We need to protect it, and we need to build it together. Otherwise, it's going to create a divide, and it's going to create a worse experience for a lot of kids that sign up for something. It's not a matter of conference school. Like, they think picking this school is going to give them the greatest experience.
Tim, do you think that there is support from all the conferences, at least in theory, to move ahead down the line with a group media deal as opposed to SEC, ACC, AAC, like everybody trying to go along their own, because there's a lot of like, it seems to me that like, especially with TNT and the CW out there wanting stuff, that there's a lot of channels that everybody has that want to put on college football, that if you guys went out there as a group would, the rising tide would lift all the boats.
To your question, is the entire group sort of open-minded and willing to do that? I don't think anybody's having that discussion.
Okay.
You know, I think some see the power in that, but at the end of the day, everybody's going to say the same thing, right? Which is, show me the numbers. Like, convince me that at the end of our collective media contracts, that this is something that's worth doing. And the reality too, to a lot of the new proposals that are out there, is the length of a lot of these media agreements are the obstacle in sort of making all of that happen. So I don't know that I could say with a straight face, guys, that there's a consensus in the room that that's something that's worth exploring. Like, I think everybody is living a little bit more in the now right now, which is, you know, how's the marketplace changing? What is this 12-team playoff thing going to actually look like? How do we shore up access so we're protecting the product, college football, in the future? Because without it being healthy and generating a lot of revenue, everything suffers, including Olympic sports, women's basketball, men's basketball. It's important that we get it right. And I'm telling you, like, the weight of that on our shoulders it's heavy, heavy stuff.
Tim, when you look at the college football playoff, the standings came out last night. We discussed it for about the first hour of the show. There are conferences that want more. Just kind of like what you said, you are what your value is as far as TV ratings, whatever numbers. Do you feel like that's the best interest? Because if, in fact, it ends up where the AAC or Big 12 or whoever else ends up with maybe a slice of the pie, won't some of the commitments people have made to college athletics eventually have some of these just disappear? They can't keep up?
It's a great point. And I think this is a time right now with House looming and other things happening around us, because like this litigation train just started rolling. It's not over by a long shot, even if House gets settled. Everybody is evaluating their investment in athletics right now. Not evaluating like, hey, should we or shouldn't we? Like, I don't think anybody's having that conversation. It's just a matter of how do we get smarter and more strategic with our investment in order to position ourselves for sustainability in the future. I think that's the really important part of this. But the 12-team playoff thing, the CFP room has refrained to some extent from talking about the format beyond this year. And we've all agreed it's like, hey, we just bought this new 12-team model. Like, let's take it out for a spin and see what it could do, you know, before we decide to put, a sidecar on it, right? So that's kind of where we're headed. But in the future, if there is expanded access, I expect everybody at that table to be clamoring, for more access. And the reality to like what should be and what people deserve, whatever, like maybe it's the way I was raised. Like the bottom line is, and I've told our football coaches this when I met them at Media Day in the summer, we got to go out there and we got to earn it.
Yep.
That's the reality. Like, let's just get out on the field. Let's earn it. And every coach says the same thing to me, Tim, what can I do to make this a great conference? And I'm like, put a great product on the field and everything will take care of itself. But like, I'm not for participation trophies. I'm not for like, hey, we should get in because we're one of those conferences. Like, we're fully prepared to line up and earn it. And I think that's a concept that everybody's got to get their arms around.
Well, I tell you this, my dad's a Naval Academy graduate, but go Army, right? And I know Tulane's in this mix too, but go Cadets. And Bryson Daly, who was on our show about 2 or 3 weeks ago, it would be amazing. I think it'd be good for college football, but they're pretty good. They represent themselves.
They really do. And I can't even tell you guys the amount of value and visibility the American Conference has gotten from the success of the academies has been off the charts. And having been part of media deals with both academies, I was part of their original CBS deals years ago when I did CSTV and CBS. I remember saying to my bosses at the time, like, why are we spending this money? I said, these are 2 of the maybe 4 national brands that are left. Like, these are truly national brands. So we've gotten a lot of value out of it. I honestly prefer, and I'm excited about this weekend, I love going to the non-conference games because I could cheer for our team. When I go to the conference games and it's, I'm sitting in a president's box last week at Tulane Navy, and Tulane scored, and he's high-fiving everybody, and I just stood there with my arms folded. I was like, don't come over here. Like, I can't be seen high-fiving anybody at a conference game. So, but, with Tulane and Army lining up in the championship, I think is fitting. They've earned it, and I think that's going to be an unbelievable tilt Friday night, national television, unopposed in a couple weeks. We're excited.
Tim, I just as a college football fan and someone who I do like when there's things that that the planners of college football say will never happen, and then it almost happens. And Army and Navy both being in this thing, and them going, well, the game's after, but it's never going to happen. We're going to have to consider one of them for the playoff. For it to be a possibility until a week ago into the season just gave me I'm sure you guys enjoyed it too, because we'll never have to worry about that. Like, oh, you won't? You won't?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Ignore us at your peril.
Yep. Never say never. And this was very well publicized, so I'm not giving up any secrets here. But when I got the job in April, I attended my first CFP meeting with Mike Oresco, who preceded me at the American, and did an unbelievable job and left a great foundation for me. And part of the topic list was Army-Navy game. And we talked about it with all the commissioners, and what we all agreed in the room was that if Army or Navy are to win out and win our conference and be selected to be in the CFP, that the results of the Army-Navy game would not matter. However, in the future, we have agreed that in a scenario where one of them ended up that team and then lost in the Army-Navy game before the playoffs started, that we would need to just assess everything. But I think everybody in that room looked around and like, we're spending 20 minutes here talking about something that is extremely unlikely. And then suddenly 5 weeks later, boom, Army's 5-0, Navy's 5-0. And we're like, here we go.
Yeah, it's great. Tim, good luck with it all. I think everything, a lot of times when so much changes at such a rapid fashion, people get a little nervous with that. And everyone's scratching and clawing, like you said, for yourself to try to see the survival. It seems to be a great time in college athletics. I just think there's so much unknown that might scare some people.
Unknowns are scary, guys. And for me too, I'm not going to deny it. And I had my eyes open coming into this job. But what you said is so true. And what I love about college, and I'm a romantic about college because my own experience, is people don't trade their school. They just don't. They're in it come hell or high water. And that's the really great part of what we have. That, by the way, pro sports is never going to have that with unanimity. That's what's really special about it. So at a time of year like this where everybody is focused on, like I have a couple friends in the office are having viewing parties for the CFP rankings. Like this is where we've arrived, but it's not enough to be there. We have to figure out a way to capitalize and modernize as part of the process. But this thing has got power that other sports will never have.
Tim, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on. Hope to have you again. Thanks to Chuck Sullivan for setting that up. Tim Pernetti, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference.